What's up everyone, back for another beer review, and today I'll be reviewing a beer from Brasserie d'Orval, and they are out of Belgium, and this is their Orval. So this is a Trappist Ale that comes in at 6.9% alcohol by volume, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. 36 IBUs, and at the time of review, this bottle is just under 8 months old. So if you want to fast forward to the actual review, it's probably going to be in about 3 minutes or so, because I want to talk a little bit about the history of this beer and my background with this beer, and it's going to take a few minutes, so just fast forward if you want to get into the actual review. So Orval, this is a beer that I've had numerous times before. I've had it relatively fresh, like around 5 or 6 months old, and I've also had it pretty old, around 5 years I think is the oldest I've had this one. And this is a very interesting Belgian beer because it is a Belgian Pale Ale, but it's also brewed with the wild yeast strain Brettanomyces, aka Brett. Now, a lot of you have probably heard about Brett, and typically what Brett imparts into beers is like a funky kind of feel to it. Typically, you'll get that horse blanket, barnyard funk kind of characteristic, sometimes a little bit of tartness. It also provides like fruitiness and a little bit of spice and whatnot. One of the craziest Brett beers I ever had a huge blast of pineapple. It was just insane. It was almost like fresh pineapple was actually in the beer. It was just kind of wild. But anyway, this beer is very unique because of the Brett. Now, when it says 6.9% on the bottles here in North America, it doesn't mean that this is actually 6.9%. I believe, and I remember reading this years ago, I think they bottled this beer at 5.9%, and the yeast will continue to eat the sugar in the bottle. So sometimes the alcohol will rise all the way up to 6.9%. Well, North American laws mean that you have to put what the highest ABV it can achieve for the bottle. So this will say 6.9% in North America, and it's specifically the United States of America. Over in Europe, I think they put 6.2% on the bottle because that's kind of like the average, I guess, as far as the ABV is concerned. So this being 8 months old, this could be 5.9, it could be 6.1, it could be 6.5, who knows, but it's somewhere between 5.9 and 6.9 typically. But yeah, this is a classic beer. A lot of folks, I would say this is a polarizing beer because a lot of folks don't like this one, and there's a lot of folks who love this one. First time I had it was a bit too much for me. It was an older bottle, so the Brett was kind of a little bit more the predominant known. I like this one a little bit fresher. I feel you get a little bit more hop character, and the Brett isn't as crazy and over the top as it can be in older vintages, at least of the ones I've had before. So yeah, this is a very interesting yet classic Belgian beer, and I am happy I'm reviewing it. Shout out to Kenny over at Premier Gourmet in Amherst, New York. He was like, hey man, because I was telling him I'm doing some, I'm trying to do one, at the very least, one imported beer per week as far as reviews go on the channel. He's like, hey, have you reviewed Orval yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't. So he recommended it. Here we are. And this is, a decently fresh bottle for here in the US, just under 8 months old. It does have a best by date of July 7th of 2027, so we should be fine. I have this very small Trappist glass that we'll pour it into and see how it goes. It's going to be super carbonated. It's going to be a pretty dry beer overall. As you can see, look at that carbonation. It's insane how carbonated this beer can be at times. But you're going to notice if you ever try this, if you've never had it before, it's definitely a very, for me, dry and very carbonated and spritzy beer. But that looks beautiful. Tons of carbonation. Has that, like, I would say just straight on glowing orange color. I don't know how it's going to look on camera. Maybe a little bit duller. It kind of looks like an old school, like West Coast double IPA or IPA. To hold it up to the light, yeah, it's going nuts in the glass. Has just over a finger of a very soap sudsy, like cream colored head. It looks beautiful. This beer, it looks like, a classic Belgian Pale Ale, maybe slightly darker, but yeah. Anyway, let's get a nose. Yeah, so because this is relatively young as far as Orval goes, it doesn't have a substantial horse blanket, barnyard funk. It's not over the top, and that's what I prefer. We all have our preferences. That's what I like. But man, it has this beautiful like fruitiness to it, like almost like apricot jam to me. Apples, pears, things like that. There's a nice spiciness, like a coriander, clove, something in that realm, probably the yeast providing that. And there's a little bit of hop character here too, like there's like a floral kind of hop character. There's just a very big underlying like breadiness too to the malt. Wow, this smells actually pretty awesome. There's also a perceived tartness I'm getting in the nose, like it just has like a little bit of like, feel like this is gonna be a slightly tart. Like I used to, like when I first, started drinking craft beer and I saw Brettanomyces or like mixed fermentation or I don't know why I just had mixed ferment. I was gonna say I wanted to say like a wild ale. I would always just my brain would process wild ale is sour. Not always the case. Wild ale a lot of times the yeast can just provide that barnyard funk or a funkiness and not necessarily a huge tartness or sourness. So over the years I started to try different beers and a lot of them are just more funky than tart. Yeah, this smells awesome though. This smells honestly better than the last time I had it. I don't remember the last time I had it. It's been a while. Because I'll just be honest with you, this is not like my favorite Belgian beer. And I've mentioned this before, but when it comes to like lighter colored, lower ABV Belgian beers like your Belgian Pale Ales and Trappist, well, Trappist are higher in ABV, but just lighter colored, they're not my favorite. But this one always had some kind of interesting character going on in the taste. And it's just a fun beer that I did enjoy it. I just didn't love it. But I'll tell you what, this smells absolutely dynamite. Yeah, there's a little bit of that horse blanket. Like a straw or a hay as well. Yeah, I just want to get to it. So cheers, everyone. Yeah, if you are someone who doesn't like effervescent and like over-the-top carbonated beers and also dry beers, steer clear of this one. It's definitely over the top. This is like full-on dry, and it's super carbonated, like one of the most carbonated beers that I've had in a hot minute. Body is nice. I'd say medium touch over medium body. It's really solid. Again, the mouthfeel is it's super crisp. It's a clean beer in general, but like if you've ever had a super carbonated beer where like after the sip, like 5-10 seconds later, it's like you don't have any kind of flavors lingering on the palate. All the carbonation kind of ripped it straight through. That's this beer in a nutshell. The taste though, it's a little bit more tart than I was anticipating, but it has like a mild tartness, maybe like a mild to moderate tartness. It doesn't approach like a sour level for me. It's definitely tart. First thing that hits me right at the forefront is that bready. There's almost like a slight caramel, like sweeter kind of bready sensation, or like a honey drizzled bread, like white bread. That dives underneath the palate. Then I'm hit with like that apricot. There's a little bit of citrus in there, touch of like the apple and the pear. It's very fruity, but it's not like overly fruity. You're getting hints and nuances of the fruits. And then midway through the palate, that's where the funkiness kicks in for me. And it's more of like I would say like a horse blanket, barnyard funk that's very subdued, but it's there. And it also has this like spicy coriander clove, maybe like a white pepper, more white pepper, I would say, than anything. Yeah, it's quite noticeable, the spice. As it continues on and finishes on the palate, again, this dries out. It's just full on dry. One of the most dry beers I've probably reviewed on the channel. And it has a very mild bitterness. This isn't like overly bitter. It's just super dry. And then I also have this like little bit of like a floral kind of hop character on the back of the palate too. It's a really complex, but what I like, here's the thing. It's a really complex, yet it's not like punching me in the face with the intensity of the flavors. It's a very complex beer that isn't like, the intensity isn't through the roof and too much. It's not like every sip is just like, oh man, you're getting, again, nuances of the fruit and the spice and that funkiness. The tartness, again, it's more on the back of the palate. There's a slight acidity as well. 6.9% or 5.9% or 6.2%, whatever, you really can't tell. It drinks, like I'd say around a 6% beer should drink. I'm gonna go one more sip and then I'm gonna lock in a rating. I'm gonna actually pour in the goodies because I typically drink this beer with everything in there, all the yeast sediment. Yeah, I'm gonna pour the rest in just because why not? We're gonna pour, what we can in here, assuming I can pour everything in here. I mean, this is a huge glass, so we'll see. Something like that, and then I'll do a nice little shake here at the bottom, pour in all the goodies, see what we can do here. That's one thing I like about this Veshmal Trappist glass is that it can handle, a super carbonated beer like this that's kind of over the top. Anyway, do one more sip here with all the goodies. Now, if you can't tell, it has hazed up that beer beyond belief. Now it looks like a oxidized New England IPA from Equilibrium. Anyway, let's get a sip. Bumps up the body a little bit. And with that whipped cream looking head, I said soap sudsy when I poured it, which is now it looks like whipped cream from the top down. It has a nice, more of a creamy kind of sensation on the palate. As far as like the carbonation goes, it's still big, but it has a nice creaminess as well. Yeah, I mean, it really didn't change a lot for me pouring in the rest of the goodies, but I'll just say that this is a well-made, enjoyable beer. Now, based on the age of this one, I like it to varying degrees. I would say when these age a little bit too much for me, they're not my favorite, so I'd give it like a 3.5 or like a 3.6. But I think something like this, where it's just under 8 months old and the Brett hasn't taken hold as much as it can, I'm really enjoying this one. So I'm going to give Orval a very firm but high 4 out of 5. I'm going to go 4.1 out of 5. And this is going to be a beer. Again, I think if you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different opinions on it. And again, I know folks who love and adore this beer and want it all, want it aged, want it fresh. And I know people that are like, I had it once. I never want to ever have it within, I don't ever want to see it, let alone drink it type of folks. So I get it, but at the end of the day, it's pretty damn good to me. Price point availability, this is in my neck of the woods here in Buffalo, New York, is about $6 a bottle, like $5.5, $6, depending on where you buy it. So a little pricey, but again, it's an imported beer. It has Brett in it. And, you know, most of the Belgian beers are typically, no matter if they're in a bottle or a can or whatever, typically like $5. So it's not like it's super expensive, but, you know, that probably scares a lot of people away from just trying it. They're like, oh, $6 a bottle, I don't want to try that, especially if you're going into the unknown, right? And availability, I have no idea with Orval. I'd imagine they're all over the world. Here in the U.S., you can get them pretty much, I think, in every state or most states. And yeah, it's a good beer. This is what I would say. If you've never had this one before and you've heard about it and you want to give it a go, if you like Belgian beers in general, but you also like lighter colored Belgian beers, lower ABV Belgian beers, and you want to try something different that maybe you're not accustomed to, pick it up. I'm sure a lot of you who will watch this review already have tried this beer. Either you love it or you hate it, whatever the case may be. But I would say, for me, this will always be a beer that I like a little bit fresher, a little bit more hop character, a little less of the Brett going wild. At least that's my experience with it. Maybe I'll try an aged bottle and review it down the line if I can find one like 4 or 5 years old, just to see the differences. But at the end of the day, how many times can I say the end of the day in a single review? I also say, what's the other thing that I like to say at the end of reviews? I'll be like, there's not much more to say about it. There's not much more to say about this one. I say that like 3 or 4 times before I actually wrap it up. So yeah, I'm still not good at beer reviews, but you guys know that. Anyway, if you've had this one before, post in the comment section. I want to hear your opinion, good or bad. Have you had it recently? How old was the bottle when you last had it? Because age does matter for this one. I know a lot of people go nuts about like hop forward beers. Oh, I'm not going to drink that, double IPA because it's 2 months old. This beer definitely changes in the bottle. It's bottle condition, so it definitely 100% changes, and it's interesting to try this one at different ages because it's almost a completely different experience. But anyway, appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. Like I said, every week I'm going to try to do an imported beer, even if I cannot pronounce the brewery or maybe the country or the town. I'm still going to try it because that's what this channel's all about, trying. And that's all I got. Anyway, to the next one. Did I mention the ABV? Whatever it is. Yeah, you can't really tell. I think I mentioned it, but I get old, and this is like probably like a 15-minute review, so I forget. Anyway, till the next one. Cheers.